everyone, and welcome to the Backstory with Tori Bailey. I hope everybody's had a wonderful week so far. And sorry about the camera getting jostled around a little bit right at the beginning. Had it in perfect place, and then I just bumped the wrong thing and moved it. So now that I've got you good and tipsy, now let's get started with tonight's edition of the Backstory. And a couple of the things that I wanted to talk to you about, and I kind of alluded to it a little bit this evening in my post, is I wanted to talk a little bit more about some of the women in all of the three Coming Home series books. I've talked a lot about some of the main characters. Anne, who was Mac Harris's daughter, Maggie, who was an understudy to Mac and fell in love with him and became a love interest with him. And I've also talked a lot about the role that Aunt Ethel plays in the family, because Aunt Ethel is kind of the matriarch in the family and the center that can kind of, the family gravitates around. And then also in the newest book, Love Made from Scratch, I've kind of talked a little bit about Cass and a little bit about Jess. But I wanted to talk a little bit more about Cass tonight. And then I wanted to talk a little bit about some of the secondary female characters in my books. Cass's character for me was the hardest character that I've ever had to write. And because she was very elusive for me. When I first started writing Love Made from Scratch, I knew that she was going to be the sister to Jess. Initially, she was going to be just kind of a secondary supporting character to Jess. And really kind of not have as big of a role as she wound up having in Love Made from Scratch. And through my journey of writing Cass, I just, like I said, she was very, very elusive for me. It was really hard for me to get a good grasp and a handle on her. But man, once I did, it was, she really, really unfolded a lot of things that I never thought about her character having, and some of her struggles. In the character Cass, in the relationship between the characters of Jess and Cass, they kind of play off of the same, they kind of play off of the relationship between their mother and their aunt, which is Dixie is their mom, and then Aunt Bunny, which is Dixie's younger sister. I kind of did a contrast between the relationships, where Cass and Jess had a really warm, affectionate, supportive type relationship. Bunny and Dixie did not have that. There was a lot of animosity in their relationship and a lot of jealousy in their relationship. So kind of looping back around to the recipe that is at the beginning of the book, which is the Love Made from Scratch recipe, I kind of took the good ingredients and put it in the relationship that Cass and Jess had. And then I took the not so good or the bad ingredients, like jealousy, envy, secrecy, dishonesty and pride, and put it in the relationship between Bunny and Dixie, so that the readers could kind of see how the two different relationships really did not mirror each other, but kind of played off of each other. So that was a little bit that worked into the development of the character of Cass. As Cass's character became a stronger character in the storyline, I began to realize that because of a lot of Dixie's jealousy and anger of how her life had turned out, was basically transferred over to how she dealt with Cass, because she really in a lot of ways blamed her personal failures on Cass, which in turn developed such a sense of insecurity within Cass. So as Cass's character began to unfold for me, I really got to watch her blossom as this young woman into becoming this person who was not self-assured of who she was, into this very confident, strong, independent young lady. And one of the things in making her character grow is I forced her away from everything that was familiar to her, which was her hometown of Dahlonega, Georgia. The people that, you know, she surrounded herself with, like her family, and the lady that she worked for, which was Lily, who owned the florist in the book. I forced her out of that comfort zone by pushing her into a total new setting and a surrounding by taking her character over to California, to the northern coast of California, up in the area of the Napa Valley, Carmel, Sausalito, and Monterey. So I wanted that stark contrast for her in the distance and the changing of the land and the geography to also represent her in her personal development of her growth as a character and in her ability to find herself. So that was a little bit of the fun part of writing Cass. A lot of pages with Cass were torn apart and ripped apart and deleted, and new things and new ideas were created. But like I said, once she really showed herself to me as to who she was, what motivated her, what her dreams were, even, you know, what she needed to become a strong woman, her character became a really, really enjoyable character to write. And I really enjoyed a lot of the dialogue that I wrote for her and Thomas. You know, the very first scene, the very first chapter in the book, I really enjoyed writing the play between her and Thomas, because even in that first chapter, they don't really realize that in the moment of them helping Jess deliver Jess's son, that they were falling in love with each other in those very early beginnings of their interactions with each other. So I really enjoyed writing the story also between her and Thomas, and enjoyed putting some of the snappy dialogue that they have between them, and also some of the most memorable moments they have between them, like their first kiss. I loved writing their first kiss. And then the last part of their journey together as a couple, the scene that played out in my head that was able to flow onto the pages. I could feel myself standing in the background watching these two characters finally admit to each other their truest feelings, their deepest dreams, and their strongest desires for each other. So that was a little bit about the character Cass. I liked writing Aunt Bunny, and the reason why I chose Aunt Bunny's name to be Aunt Bunny is because when I was in grade school, there was actually a math teacher that her name was Bunny. And I always thought that was a cool name for somebody to have. So I was, you know, as I was thinking about names for my characters, I was like, well, I'm gonna give this particular character's name Bunny. And Bunny is a very happy person. She's a very outgoing person. She's well liked. She's a very integral part of the community because she owns the pottery shop on the square in Dahlonega. So she is, you know, she's just a warm person that everybody likes to be around and enjoy having company with. And I loved writing, and when I wrote her husband's character, or developed her husband's character, which is Hoppy, you know, when I write, I kind of like to put a play on things and put a little bit of, I guess, lightness into the story. And I was thinking, what would be a cool way to have a couple where the wife was named Bunny and the husband was named Hoppy? And the way I came about the name Hoppy was not because of the rabbit kind of theme with the names, but again, going back to my childhood, there was a gentleman in the church that I used to go to as a young child and I grew up in. His nickname was Hoppy. His real name, people either called him Mr. Jimmy or they either called him Hoppy. And again, as a child, I was like, that's a cool name for somebody to have, you know, Hoppy. So when I knew that I was going to name, you know, this particular character Bunny, I was like, well, this is a perfect opening to bring in the name Hoppy and put it together and have this couple named Aunt Bunny and Uncle Hoppy. So, so that's kind of how those two characters came about. Now, kind of, again, moving on to a couple of other women that I've not talked about, and again, staying with the book Love Made from Scratch. Georgia. Whew, that woman was a piece of work. I didn't have to struggle for her. I mean, she was, she was just as a strong personality in my creative process of creating her character and creating the different characters in the book as she was in the book. And I have had one of my readers to actually comment to me, who has read all 3 books in the series, that, the comment that she gave me, and it was a really sweet compliment. She says, "You are such a sweet person, but you can write the meanest women." And she says, how is that? And I guess my response is I let pretty much the characters drive their personalities. And if anybody anybody that actually does sit down to write fiction understands that, as a writer, you're just more or less a vessel for your characters, because they're going to reveal who they are and they're going to come out and their personalities. You don't control the characters. The characters pretty much tell you what's going to happen. And you just have to be willing to be open to listen to them and not try to force them, into predicaments or situations or personality styles that you think they should be, because then you're going to find the story is just not going to work for you. It's not going to have a good flow. It's not going to have a natural feel for you. But Georgia, every book has to have an evil person. And somebody put on Facebook today, and I absolutely loved it. I actually shared it on my page, that all of the evil women and all of the Disney's evil women were actually princesses that were never allowed to be free. And I thought, that's pretty funny. And I think the last part it was because they spent too long in customer service. And anybody who works with the public alike can probably get a good chuckle out of that too. But anyway, looping back to how I'm able to write some of my antagonists with the strongest personalities as I do. It also kind of loops back to something that I've heard writers over the years say, and even people who write for the screen have said, that it's easier to write a bad person than it is to write a good person, because the thing is it's easy to be nice, and but when you're writing the antagonist, you're really sometimes allowing yourself to say on paper things that you would really probably like to say in reality, but for civility's sake, you just, you have that break between your mouth and your brain. We usually call it the clutch. For those of us who used to drive a straight shift, we can usually put that, engage that clutch to keep the mouth from going into gear. And I sometimes call it the filter. And sometimes the filter doesn't always work as well as it should, and things come out. But again, going back to the writing of the antagonist, sometimes that's one of the things I think is fun to do, is you put your antagonist in a scene and you just let it rip with them saying the things that if you were in that scene that you would really sometimes like to say. Now, another thing too is, one of the things I like to do when I write my antagonist is I also like for it to eventually, and it's the development and the growth of the character, to eventually the reader have a little bit of sorrow or empathy for the character, because even though they have done everything that has just been unimaginable, they've just been mean, they've been hateful, they've been spiteful, they've got themselves caught in their own trap, because of their undermining of doing things has got them caught in their own little snares. I also like to put them in a position to where the reader kind of does feel a little bit sorry for them, because the reader, I would like for the reader to, say, if they had only just been willing to have cooperated, if they hadn't have been so self-serving, if they had not been so just dead set on this one particular agenda, then, they could have had everything that they were wanting, but they got into their own way. They stood in their own way of getting that. And I wrote a really good scene with Georgia and Wilder, to where I hope the reader gets to that point in that scene, because I don't normally like to break marriages up in a book, but in the reality of the real day and the real world that we live in today, unfortunately, not all marriages always last. And when I did make that decision to go down that route with Georgia and Wilder, I wrote a really, really good scene to me personally, I think, to where Georgia really begins to understand the true value of what she had and what she lost because of her just headstrong, ambivalent way of thinking and not wanting to accept Jess. And it kind of goes back to that Aesop fable, and I really worked this particular Aesop fable through both Dixie and Georgia character, which is one of my favorite Aesop fables, which is the dog and the bone story, where the dog is carrying a bone in his mouth, and he crosses a bridge and he looks over into the water and he sees the reflection of another dog with a bone, and he gets envious and wants that other bone and opens his mouth, and in the process loses the bone he has. And I think sometimes we personally can be like that in our own lives, because we don't really value or realize the value of what we have, because we're too busy chasing after that other dog with the bone, and we don't realize that really we're chasing ourselves. And if we would just stop and just take stock of what we have, that we would appreciate it. So that was a little bit about the Georgia character. Now, I tend to get a little long-winded, so I'm going to go ahead and cut it off right there right tonight. Because another thing, one of my most favorite shows is coming on tonight. It's my season finale for the show Nashville. Oh my God, it broke my heart when they killed the character Raina James off. I was squalling like a kid on that episode. But anyway, tonight's the last night for that, so I need to scoot on downstairs and get my husband some supper cooked and settle down to watch that. But don't forget, March the 25th, I'm going to be in Dahlonega at the Dahlonega Literary Festival. Love Made from Scratch went live today with the Kindle version on Amazon. The Kindle version is $2.99. That's $2.99. So go over to Amazon, and if you haven't gotten a Kindle version, you can get that. Or if you want to go ahead and order your softback cover, you can also get a softback cover at Amazon as well. Other than that, those are the only news and updates I have for Tori Bailey. And so in the meantime, as my mom always said, if the good Lord's willing and the creek don't rise, I will see you guys again next Thursday. God bless and have a good night and stay warm. And don't forget to set your clocks back on Saturday night. We spring forward an hour. And I understand Mother Nature may be off her meds again. I think we were supposed to get some cold temperatures down here in our area of the country. So anyway, that's your weather report. And I'll see you guys next week, and y'all have a great evening.